we started off a little heavy last week, so I figured maybe we could start with like Moulin
Cool.
Rouge this time, which isn't light, but
Yeah.
necessarily. But I'm really curious to hear about the musical version of it because that's what you saw it on Broadway there.
Yeah. So I saw this. I won the lottery again, and I saw Moulin Rouge yesterday. Hmm, it was myself and a friend of mine in my neighborhood, and I had never seen the movie, and I've been trying to play to win for this show for, I'm not kidding, 4 or 5 years because this actually came out June or July of 2019, the initial release of Moulin Rouge for the on Broadway, right? The film came out in 2001, so I had
Hmm.
not seen the film, and at that point I had not seen the Broadway show. So finally, when I won, I was like, all right, it's time. So I didn't real so I made sure ahead of time not to see the movie because I didn't want to have any preconceived notions. So I thought, all right, let me go in completely blind. All I know is that it takes place in Paris, burlesque. I know that Nicole Kidman's character was the star burlesque performer, and then Christian, the character played by Ewan McGregor, was an outsider, a writer essentially
Hmm.
who was just arriving to Paris and he is looking for his next creative venture. Shall I say? That's all I knew. So I watched the Broadway show yesterday evening and I didn't realize this was a jukebox
Hmm.
show, very much so like and Juliet and some others that have been coming out within the past like 5+ years, give or take. I feel like that's like a new thing for Broadway. It's popular. However, I was a little shocked by that. So when we first came into the theater, they had people. So before even the show started at 7 o'clock, they told us not to put our or bring our phones out. There were already cast members dancing in lingerie and going into the audience and kind of like teasing the audience a little bit. They had like men in, I guess, lingerie equivalent, whatever we want to call it, Chippendale style stuff. And then the women dressed, and it was just so elaborately decorated. The entire theater, there was a lot of red, and you felt like you were in the actual club itself. It was very inviting. Our seats were awesome. The voices of the actors were incredible who were in the actual production. The dancing was fantastic. They had a little catwalk, which was really cool. And I think when it comes to like, because they have two parts, it's two acts
Hmm.
in general. What they do is the first act is more of us just like getting to know the characters of like Satine and Christian, and then the club, and then like really developing into the whole story itself as well. So, to be honest with you, I didn't even realize that she was really sick until the end of the show. They don't, so I watched the movie late last night into this into this morning, and they didn't really explain, like she coughed a few times, but in the movie they reveal pretty quickly like she's not well.
Hmm.
Whereas in the film, I mean in the show, you don't find that out until like, I don't know, maybe midway through. And Christian, the character in the show, doesn't know she's sick until she's like dead in his lap, which was interesting. So uh, I normally like jukebox jukebox films and jukebox shows. I wasn't particularly like fond of this one. Now, the difference is really between the show and the actual movie are the selection of songs. They bring really contemporary songs into Moulin Rouge. When you start hearing Lady Gaga's Bad Romance, I'm like, this wasn't in the film. This is like post 2008, 2009, like when she's making that. And Moulin Rouge came out in 2001. The end of the show, they have Hey from Outcast. They they throw in like Adele's Rolling in the Deep. And I just felt like throwing those songs into such a period piece type of show wasn't very fitting. I didn't really like that. But then again, I watched the movie and they did use some of the same songs there, like
Hmm.
Roxanne was used. Um, Diamonds are a girl's best friend. So things like
Yeah.
that. And then Come What May, I think was originally written for the show as well as the one where the main one, Lady Marmalade, that
That,
as
yeah, that
well,
was originally, yeah, there,
like
that
for
was
the
written for
show.
the show. Yeah.
So it was a mix. The stage design was some of the best I've ever seen, though. Just how they had the windmill incorporated, the elephant dressing room, building structure where Satine lives slash gets ready for her shows. It was phenomenal in general. I thought from at least a spectacle standpoint, it was incredibly entertaining. Like you go out to see the show and you're entertained by just the costumes, the set design. It's fantastic. What I say from like a content standpoint, it was like the most interesting and fascinating play. No, I, you know, and the songs that you do like, they're fine, but it's just more like remixes of contemporary music. I wasn't, thinking, all right, wow, this is an amazing song from Moulin Rouge. Like I could say for Chicago, I could say for Dear Evan Hansen, Rent, just to name three of my favorite shows that is known for its soundtrack and known for its music and and songs. So in that respect, it was more of just in my mind like a performance than it was an actual original play. Movie was fine, very dark. Remind me a little bit of like Sweeney Todd and Chicago, just how they have the cameras shown with certain scenes. But I'm glad I saw it. I thought it was a very cool vibe, like a nice, fun way to spend a Friday evening and get to have a night on the town with a girlfriend.
Yeah, I saw it in the theater when it came out, the original movie. Um, I remember not having any idea what I was walking into, so it was like it was a bit of a shock, right? Like I
Hmm.
didn't know um what was going on, but thankfully for me, I had spent a lot of time in the theater, so like I was kind of down with it. Um, but yeah, it's looking at it, the soundtrack for the Broadway show looks relatively different. Like Nature Boy, the opening song for the movie is David Bowie. Um, Lady Marmalade, there's an original Lady Marmalade, and then I think
Redid
was
it with like Christina
yeah,
and Maya, Lil Kim, and Pink. Yeah, that
yeah.
was.
Um, and then Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend, obviously. There's a ton of Madonna in the movie. Um,
Oh yeah,
Material Girl sneaks in there,
like a virgin.
like a virgin, which is I love that version of it because it's done by what's his name, the kind of ringleader of the whole Moulin Rouge, whose character's name I
Oh,
can't remember.
Harry.
And like looking at this, I'm trying to see. I wonder if the Elephant Love medley is different in. It must be in the Broadway show
Hmm.
because that one had All You Need Is Love. I Was Made for Loving You, One More Night by Phil Collins.
Hmm.
Um, Don't Leave Me This Way. Love Lifts Us Up Where We Belong. Uh, Bowie's Heroes. Dolly Parton's I Will Always Love You. Like that had it felt like every song under the sun in it. Um, and
Yeah.
one of the things that I really liked about the movie, when I found out afterwards, especially, is that everything you hear in the movie is them singing on set. So
Yes.
they didn't. They may have gone to the studio to clean up a few things, but generally speaking, the show you saw or the movie you saw was um, Ewan McGregor and Nicole Kidman like singing on stage. John Leguizamo was singing on stage.
Hmm.
And I thought that was really cool. Like I didn't know that Ewan McGregor could sing. I don't think I knew that um Nicole Kidman could sing. and I thought they were both really great. It's interesting to me that the um, her being sick is underplayed in the stage show because I would think you
So
would play that
underplayed.
up because that, I mean, that makes the ending of the movie so like heavy.
Hmm.
Like it's for me, I love the movie and the way that it ends, it just doesn't end in a happy spot. Like you're left, it's a very like tragic ending. And I
Right.
think I think if you downplay that at all, you kind of lose some of the magic of the show, even though it sucks, like it's sad. But losing that, I think you lose some of the impact of the show overall. Because
Right.
he put so much time into trying to rescue her and trying to be with her and all this, and it's kind of all for naught.
Right. I
Um,
think like they made it show in the play like she's obviously very sick and they're telling her like go to a hospital. And she's like, no, I have to do the play for Christian. If I don't
mhm.
finish it up, it's for Christian, like to get what he wants. And that's her true love at the end of the day. The name of that character is Harold Zidler.
Ziegler, yeah,
Yeah, Zidler. The
yeah.
I want to call him the ringleader, ringmaster,
Yeah,
but
that's
he's
what he
like
is in my head too, but he's not. But
he's the
he's
face of
the
the
owner
production,
here.
basically.
Yeah. Um, but he's great. Like his character goes, and I only have the movie to base it on, but his character goes through a lot too. Like
Right.
really like wants the team to be happy, but he needs the show to work. He needs the investors' money, and
From
then
the Duke, yeah.
yeah, and then he's like at some point he's like he just wants her to be happy again, and then when he really knows she's dying, like it's a whole other thing. Like he goes through a lot, and I love that actor from the movie.
Hmm.
He's been in a bunch of stuff, and he's really talented. Um,
Yeah.
it's funny that you saw it because I've been meaning to rewatch the movie because I haven't watched it in a long time. But I actually loved the soundtrack when it came out, and to the point that every other weekend, me and my daughter would drive to my mom's house when I had her because I had my daughter every other weekend.
Hmm.
And we would sing along to the Moulin Rouge soundtrack when we drove. So
Oh, fun.
like she knows the soundtrack, I know the soundtrack. Like it's part of like her growing up, and I loved it. And I think because um it wasn't the thing back then. Like you said, there's a lot of shows that are doing it now on Broadway, but back then it was less common. And this was Boz Lerman taking, all
Creative
these
license.
songs, yeah. And I would imagine the musical or yeah, the Broadway show, they probably just couldn't get the rights to some of the songs that they had before because there's not a lot of reason to change them. There's not a great reason to modernize it anymore. I mean, when this
Hmm.
came out in 2001, every song they chose was 15 to 20 years old, at least.
Right.
So it's not like it was modern music even then. So it's interesting that they changed it as much as they did.
Yeah, it felt like very pop at certain points
Hmm.
where I was just like, I just thought it was an interesting choice. I don't know if they did that because that's what Broadway is becoming right now, or I mean, you bring up an excellent point too. Maybe they couldn't get the rights to those songs on Broadway for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Um, but it's definitely entertaining. I think it's one of those shows where if you're looking for something with great costumes and stage design, definitely go see it. If you're looking for something with like original songs and an amazing story, probably not that. I remember leaving like Dear Evan Hansen's probably my favorite. That and Rent are probably my two
Yeah.
favorite Broadway shows, and those are like original songs and the stories itself. Like both of those, I'm crying at the end with between like Dear Evan Hansen with the whole um, theme of suicide and such, and
Hmm.
then coming to terms with like mental health, and then Brent with just a character passing away from AIDS, things like that. That it's such original content. Whereas with this, not that it's not original, the music itself, it doesn't feel like the music was very fitting for the content. So that's where I think it fell short for me. the voices were fantastic. The person who played Satine, who I didn't even know until the end, was the understudy. She crushed it.
Oh wow.
I was telling the girl, my friend who I saw the show with after seeing the film, and the guy who played the Duke was so attractive in the show. He was too attractive. And now watching the movie, I was like, like poor casting on their part because Satine would have totally like if the guy looked like that, she'd be like, I don't know about this Christian. Like I'm good with this rich, handsome guy. Whereas in the movie, he's not that great look, in my opinion. He's older, he's got like the weird mustache, whereas the guy they casted as the Duke on the Broad, or at least in the Broadway show right now, he's very handsome. And the guy who plays Christian, he's super young. He looks like a young Timothy Chalamet. And the one who plays Satine, she's like in her late 30s. She's at least like 8, 9 years older than Christian. So I just didn't find like the casting to be that believable that she would pass over this rich, really like I'll just say it, hot guy who is wealthy for this young poor guy when she was in that, position. I mean, she's not a prostitute. I mean, I guess started off as like on the streets to being this lead dancer, but she's not, dripping in money. I don't find the story to be very realistic based on a woman in her position.
Hmm. Yeah, it does play out better in the film, and the dude that plays the Duke is super skeezy in the movie.
Yeah, very
Like,
skeezy.
yeah, you're like that guy sucks. Um, but like looking at it, I didn't know this. It premiered at the Cannes Film Festival before it released in theaters, and it was up for the Palme d'Or. So it was like
Hmm.
up for one of the better um, films that year. Anyways, it had eight Oscar nominations, including Best Picture. It won production design and costume design, which totally makes sense.
Yep.
Um, and then I guess in 2016, BBC had it ranked as its 53rd 100 greatest films of the 21st century.
Really?
Yeah, so
Huh.
um, it did better than I thought, like at least critically. I'd have
Hmm.
to look at Rotten Tomatoes. I don't know exactly what it was on there, but um, it was something kind of new and different and original at the time, and it was in like the height of Baz Luhrmann, right? Because Baz Luhrmann did a few years before that, he did his Romeo and Juliet with Claire
Leo
Danes
Dica
and Leah
Leo
and Leo
DiCaprio.
DiCaprio. Um, and he's still doing stuff, and he's definitely I wouldn't say he's like a visionary director, but he likes to take things and kind of turn them on their ear a little bit. Obviously,
Right.
you know, um, Romeo and Juliet was a huge like turn from what people are used to. It was all the original Shakespearean dialogue, but it was done in modern times in
In
like
like California,
LA.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. And like they even had signs up that would have been in the original. Like, there was one like check your swords at the door, but they had guns, right? So they had to check their guns at the door. Um, but it
That's
was,
so funny.
I, I notably just dislike Shakespeare to like no end. Like I really hate Shakespeare to the point that when I took a Shakespeare class, I was like the one dissenting voice because I was an English major at one point.
Uh-huh.
And like I was the one dissenting voice, and the teacher actually really appreciated it because I wasn't just like this sucks, I don't like it. My take always on it was like he's not as brilliant of a storyteller as everybody says. Like a
Yeah.
bunch of his stories were taken from other stories that had already been told, so they were just adaptations, and things like that. And then um, some of his stories just aren't that great. And for some reason, this dude is just like the end all be all of
Literature
literature. Yeah, and I'm just like I hate him. So like I've never enjoyed Shakespeare, but I actually kind of enjoy the Baz Luhrmann Leo DiCaprio version.
version.
Um,
It's a
and
street.
so
I always call it the street version.
oh, for sure, for sure.
It's hilarious in my mind. So I actually like that movie as well. The opening scene, it's like they're in the car and it's like the boys, the boys, the boys, and they're there, and then that's when they show up and pull up to the gas station, and it's um I think it's his crew, Romeo, and it's what the Capulets and
Yeah.
the
Montagues. Yeah.
Montagues, that's right. And I just remember that scene with like the rap song. I was like, this is hilarious.
Yeah. It was an interesting take.
Yeah.
Um, and I think Baz Luhrmann is the one that did the Elvis movie with
Yes.
Austin Butler, right?
Most recently. Yep, that's his
Yeah.
most recent, I think,
Um,
big film, which I
yeah.
thought was fine. I didn't love it, but I thought it was fine. Like okay. It gives you an inside look to just, Elvis and how he was able to rise to fame.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, and I think that Baz Luhrmann doesn't necessarily change things like wildly, but he does give you kind of a different take on it than you would get somewhere else.
right, definitely. Yeah, I'm glad I saw it. I think it's just been something that's been on my list for a while. And I know even the movie has had a hype for a very long time. I mean, I like Nicole Kidman. I've seen her. I mean, most recently seeing her in um, The Killing of a Sacred Deer.
Hmm.
Totally, you can't get two different roles between
Oh
th
yeah.
that and Satine. I don't recall seeing her in a musical ever or any type of singing role prior to that. And I was watching on the train on my way over to, because it's Father's Day weekend, I'm visiting my family. And I was listening to an interview within the past 5, 10 years between it's called Actors on or Actors for Actors. I forgot what it's
Hmm.
called, but it's when
On
actors
Variety.
interview.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was watching on YouTube and she was it was her and Ewan McGregor and she was like, "You have such a nice voice." And I was just trying to keep up and he's just so humble. He's like, "No, no, you're fine too." And I didn't realize how good of a singing voice he has. And I
Hmm.
know he's in Star Wars movies, which you and Andrew both love, and I loved him in the movie Down with Love, and of course, most recently, seeing him in A Gentleman in Moscow, 20
Hmm.
plus years later. So he's really aged gracefully, and he's still putting out good content and showing that he's a great actor.
Yeah, he's great. Like I said, I was really surprised by how good they were in the movie. Jim Broadbent, the guy that played Ziegler, he's been around. Like he's
Hmm.
got musical background and all that. I didn't expect it from John Leguizamo either, although his part is much smaller.
Yeah.
He's a little more comical, so he kind of get away with not like full on hardcore singing. But
Hmm.
but it's good. I enjoy the movie a lot. Um, I'd be curious, for you seeing it the first time, anybody else that sees it for the first time, at least now kind of knows what they're getting when they go into it. I'd be curious to see how people feel about it um, now because it still feels like something different. There's not a lot of musicals that work like this.
Right.
Even though they're becoming bigger on Broadway, it sounds like this was ahead of its time in that regard, I think.
Definitely. Maybe that's why I didn't like it as much. Whereas if I had seen it, did you see it when it came out in
Yeah.
2001?
Yeah, I saw it in the
Okay.
theater.
So this is probably just like cutting edge for you,
Yeah.
seeing something like this. Yeah, you didn't see too many musicals. I mean, like Chicago won Best Picture. I think it was in, I don't know,
Uh,
2002,
yeah, I think
3.
Chicago was after, yeah.
Yeah. And then sort of the gates opened for musicals turning into Broadway shows
Hmm.
over time. Sorry, musicals from Broadway shows becoming films. That's what I meant to
Hmm.
say.
No.
So, I mean, after that, you get things like Rent, Les Mis shortly after. You get
Hmm.
Dear Evan Hansen, which is a flop in theaters. Don't see it. It's horrible.
Yeah, just
Um,
just go listen to the soundtrack or see it on
just listen to the
Broadway. Yeah.
soundtrack. Just don't see the movie. It's so bad. It's so bad. It just doesn't do it. Like I almost wish they scrapped it. Like completed filming, and they said, "This is garbage. Why are we going to put this in theaters?" So sad. Like had I seen the movie first, I'd be like, I have no interest in seeing the play. I would have said that. That's how poorly done it was. Rent's fantastic both on stage and in the theaters. Chicago, the same thing, because they're not really doing much with like stage. I mean, they're in jail most of the time, and when they do
Yeah.
stage, you're on a stage, so there's not much set design to do. The movie was great. I mean, you've got a fantastic cast there, but yeah, I'm glad I got to see Moulin Rouge, and now I know more of like the origins of jukebox theater as a
Yeah.
result of that.
Yeah, that is cool. And it sounds like, if nothing else, it was worth looking at, like visually.
100%.
Yeah. I remember that being kind of a shocking thing about the film too. Is just like it had this old school feel, but they did make it feel sort of modern in the way that it looked too. Like because it had that kind of Baz Luhrmann twinge to it, that it didn't feel necessarily like a period piece, although it still was. Um
Right. Because it's supposed to take place in 1890s, but yet
mhm.
it has a very similar feel to Chicago as if, hey, let's push this up 20, 25 years
Yeah.
when like prohibition and jazz age was like when women are starting to break free and really express themselves musically, sexually, etc. I felt like it was a little too soon. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe in France they've been doing that behind the scenes that we didn't know, but uh, it definitely like someone could have just said, yeah, it's 1920s, 1930s. I wouldn't have known had I not, you know, watched the film. The film actually goes into more detail about the actual history.
Yeah, I thought that there was some true story behind it, but like looking at the IMDb page, I don't see anything that actually suggests that. So it must be strictly made up. But it's, for me, like again, having seen the movie, not the play, I thought the story was pretty good
Right,
in the movie. But you have to have that long running current of her being sick, like pretty early on in the film. I mean, she coughs up blood. Like if you know what's going,
right,
about illnesses back then, that's not a good thing.
right,
If you cough up blood now, like today, it's still not a good thing. But we've got modern medicine that can probably help you out, and at least depending on what it is. But in this film, there's just no, they
right.
wouldn't have had anything.
But also, like, how did nobody else get sick? She figures she had tuberculosis in her system for what, at least a few weeks? We don't know.
Mhm.
And also, that's the other thing I was questioning. They kept on calling it the consumption or consumption. They didn't actually title it until like I Googled it. It was like, what is this disease? Tuberculosis. Okay, good to know. And how is it that she's able to perform and do all of those amazing dances while being so sick? That's the other thing I question too. I'm like, she looks quite well for
Yeah.
someone who is doing, all of these tricks and stuff because it's not like she's just singing a ballad, right? She's
Oh yeah.
actually
Yeah. In the movie, she's like on the
twirling.
swing, and yeah, she's doing all kinds of stuff.
That's how they
So,
introduced Satine in the show. They have her come down on the swing,
mhm,
which is cool. But yeah, she doesn't like cough blood until like the last maybe like 10, 15 minutes of the show. And yeah, Christian doesn't even know she's sick until she's like dead in the lap. Whereas in the movie, he's like one of the first people to know that she's not well,
mhm,
which I kind of thought like, okay, great. That's like building their connection even further because he knows she doesn't have a lot of time left. It's more believable in that sense that he wants to make her almost like his muse for his future works.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So yeah, if I would say anybody that hasn't seen it, if musicals are your thing, and you now know that it is a jukebox musical, right? Like it's not original work. Even if you can't get to Broadway, check out the movie. I like it a lot. And if for no other reason than Ewan McGregor and Nicole Kidman are really pretty freaking talented, all considering. And like I said, the cool factor of it actually being recorded on stage. They didn't go into a studio and get remixed a bunch and all that. Like they were doing their real stuff. So it's pretty neat. All right. Well, I will then move on to, I think we're going to slowly get more depressing as we go, but I will talk about only murders in the building real quick. I finally, like, I started this, my daughter was in town last year and we started it with her. She had already seen it. And then for some reason we stopped watching it. And so started again from the beginning last week, only into the first episode of season two. But it is a lot of fun. So this is a show. It stars Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez. And I was thinking about it today, and like Steve Martin and Martin Short could probably get any idea they have ever had greenlit just by wanting it done, right? Like Steve Martin is a legend. Martin Short is a legend. They know everybody in the SNL community. Tina Fey works with them and loves them, and she's a big time producer right now too. Like, I don't think there's anything they couldn't get done if they wanted to get it done. And the only thing that, like, the story that I don't know, and I really need to look it up, is how Selena Gomez ended up in this. Like, because she's like the outlier. It's not like she was hanging out with Steve Martin like 6 years ago all the time, and they were like, "Let's do a show together." So I'm really curious. If I find it, I might just put it in a little note at the bottom or something. But I don't know what the reason is for Selena Gomez being picked, but she's great. Like, she's perfect. Like, she's adorable, but she's a little foul mouthed in this, which is kind of almost welcome because, like, I in my head she's a Disney kid, a cute Disney kid and all that. But the gist of the story is that Steve Martin's a washed up actor. He did a show in like the 90s called Brazos, where he was the lead detective on a cop show. um, Martin Short is a failed Broadway producer. He's created his biggest failure is Splash the musical, based on the movie Splash. Um, and then Selena Gomez, her character is like a total mystery. Like, they don't really know anything about her. Then they don't know each other. They all live in the same building, but they don't know each other. And like, they bump into each other in the elevator. They have an uncomfortable moment, but nobody really knows each other. And then there is an alarm and everybody gets rushed out of the building. And when they get rushed out of the building, Steve Martin goes to this restaurant, presumably across the street or at least somewhere close. And he sits down and he puts on headphones and he starts to listen to a podcast, a murder podcast that he likes, which is hosted by Tina Fey's character. And so he's super into it. Like, he's listening to it and he's got like a map of like the story so far and all this stuff. And then Martin Short comes in, and he's like, "Oh my God, you listen to that show?" He's like, "I love that show." So they start talking about it. And then Selena Gomez comes in, and they have the only table and she had just bumped into them. So she's, you know, sits down with them, but she's trying to ignore him. And then she realizes that they're talking about this podcast, which she's also a huge fan of. So they kind of bond over this. And then it turns out the reason they got kicked out of the building, somebody pulled a fire alarm, but during that fire alarm, somebody in the building was murdered. And so they decide to make their own true crime podcast. And at one point they're talking about, oh, should we do other murders? Should, like, we talk about other things, blah, blah, blah. Should we talk about, and they're like, no, we should only do murders in the building. Should only murders in the building. And so that's where the name of it comes from. And then the rest of the show, I think it's just 10 episodes. The rest of the season is them trying to work through and solve this mystery, this murder, like, as it happened, because the police instantly say it was a suicide, like a gunshot to the head, and they don't buy it. So it's them going through and trying to solve this mystery while trying to record a podcast, because, as it turns out, it's really important for Martin Short's character because he's broke. He has no money right now because he lost it all in failed musicals, and um, he's going to lose his room in this building. And that's like his one, like, he feels like his one, like, life's dream was to live in this building. It's called the Acadia, and it's this big, beautiful building in New York. And he feels like if he gets kicked out of there, like, then he's lost it all, which is really, kind of tragic because he's got a kind of a broken relationship with his son. And at one point he's talking to his son and he's trying to borrow money from his son. And his son's like, just sell the place and just get out of there. And he's like, he literally looks at his son and he's like, if I don't live there, I have nothing. Like to his son. And it's like this bad moment where he loves his son, but he's broken, right? And so like I don't want to give anything away about it other than, um they're investigating the mystery. So I finished the first season where they effectively solved the first murder. And then at the very end, it kind of kicks into starts off where you're going to go in the next season. Then there's another murder in the building. So they're going to be able to do, it seems like, a second podcast. I'm only on the first episode of the second season. So there's some fallout from the end of the first season that they're dealing with right now. Um, but I mean, it's really fun. It's an interesting show because every episode in the first season seems like it has one moment where it goes kind of over the top. Like there's one where there's one episode that is almost entirely silent. Um, Nathan Lane is in this one, and his son is deaf, and his son is playing a key part of that episode. And so almost the entire episode, I don't think there's a line of dialogue until the end of the episode. So it's a full like 35 minutes of silence, and sign language and subtitles, but it's because of the character. And there's another one where for they explain it at the end, but for most of the episode, there's there's two people in a Bugs Bunny and a Porky Pig costume following um, Steve Martin around, but he's the only one that can see them. So like in each episode, there's something that's just a little weird, that's a little surreal going on. Um, but it's really fun, and I definitely recommend it. I think it did really well in the first few seasons. There's 3 seasons on Hulu right now, and the fourth season's already been greenlit. The first season, like the big guest appearance is Sting. He has a few scenes in it, and he's pretty funny. It seems like in season 2, Amy Schumer might be the Sting kind of character. And then I know there's somebody for seasons 3 and 4. Like they add kind of cool names in there as they go. So um it's a lot of fun though. Like it really is fun. It's Steve Martin and Martin Short. You can't really go wrong. And then I think Selena Gomez is actually fantastic. She's sweet but a little grumpy and fun, and uh, she hasn't aged in like 20 years. She still looks like she's 16, and I think she's like 30, 35 or something like that. Like she's
Hmm.
not a little kid anymore, but she has a baby face. Like she's just hasn't really ever aged since she left the Disney Channel. Like
Yeah.
she's a vampire or something. I don't know.
Yeah. And I know she had a lot of like health issues within the past
Yeah.
couple of years too, where
Yeah.
she was able to get a friend to give her, I guess, a transplant for
I don't
she
remember what it
had.
was because it wasn't kidney failure, but it was not good. Like it wasn't like life-threateningly serious, I don't think, but it was bad. Like and I don't remember what it was. And I before I started watching Murders in the Building, I really kind of fell in love with her because during the pandemic, she did a show on HBO called Selena and Chef.
Mm,
And she was stuck at home, but because she has some money and she knows some producer people and she wanted to do something fun, her house is obviously nice. She's got money. So they put in really good cameras in her
hmm.
kitchen. And then she did Zoom calls with celebrity like chefs. And they would go through cooking a meal and, have a conversation and do all this. And,
Oh, nice.
and it was really cute because, cooking wise, she's kind of a dummy. Like she doesn't know anything. So it was her learning,
Right.
them having conversations about it, telling their stories and stuff like that. And it's a really fun show. And I think they've done 3 seasons of it now. And she just started a new one called Selena and Restaurant, which I haven't watched yet. But
Yeah,
she's really likable, like just as a person from that show. And so seeing her on Only Murders in the Building, she's really
totally.
likable.
It looks like it was a kidney transplant.
It was a kidney transplant. Okay. Um,
Look,
yeah, like I said, I knew she was not well, and I know she went through a bunch of stuff,
that's
and
it. That's what it looks like.
yeah, and she had a hard time because she took a lot of crap from people because her weight kind of fluctuated a lot, and when you're a celebrity and stuff like that happens, especially when you're a female celebrity, people are you know kind of dicks about it, and I know she took it kind of hard for a little bit, but I
Right.
like I said, I like her a lot. So to see her in this, and then obviously Steve Martin, Martin Short, like I said, are comedy legends. Tina Fey shows up in a bit of it. She's great. So it's a
That's
lot of fun.
awesome.
Yeah, it really is a lot of fun.
They
So I'd recommend
uh
it to anybody.
they hosted SNL, the two of them together. I think was it last year or maybe earlier this year? And then they had her come in for the monologue,
Okay.
which was pretty cool. But yeah, I don't remember them ever having, I'm sure they have in the past too, but like two hosts. They had both Steve Martin and Martin Short to promote um
Only Murders.
only murders in the building. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun too because like from what I've heard is that the three of them are all really close now. Like they didn't really know each other
Hmm.
before, but they're really close now. So they like her a lot. So
That's great. Yeah, and the two of them have like such an awesome dynamic I
mm,
mean, you mentioned it too, a couple weeks back when you watched the Steve Martin documentary, like he's one of the few people who like really understands Steve
yeah.
Martin, Martin Short.
Yeah, he's a pretty closed off guy, and the two of them they're not like inseparable, but like they have a very excellent understanding of each other. Like they're very close, and that was a
Right,
really interesting thing to see.
definitely.
So so yeah, Only Murders in the Building. Go watch it. It's awesome. It's on Hulu. Like I said, 3 seasons, and the fourth season is coming. So there's a good amount to watch. I think every season is 10 episodes. So it's not
Perfect.
overwhelming, and they're not even an hour long. I think they're 35 to 40 minutes long. So
Quick. Love that.
pretty digestible.
Nice.
All right. So I don't know, you can pick. You can do either Ezra or Iron Claw.
Let's do Iron Claw because I watched that most recently, and Ezra is something that I want to end with because I think it's just I think we're still in like a little bit of a dark patch, but I want to end like really happy.
All right. Then I might go two in a row then, so you can, because Civil
Oh,
War is not uplifting.
okay. Okay. Do you want to go with Civil
No,
War?
go ahead and go with
Oh,
Iron Claw, and then
okay,
we'll.
gotcha. I see what we're doing here. We're going like just really, 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 really dark and then ending like sort of happy. Great. So The Iron Claw came out at the end of 2023. This is the film that I really wanted to see in theaters and just didn't get a chance to see it. And I subscribed to HBO Max for this month, and that was one of the first films that it recommended for me. And I was like, yes, you, I remember you. I want to watch you. And then I finally decided to watch it on Thursday night. And it tells the story of the Von Erich brothers in the 1970s, early 80s, mostly the 80s, and they're like a wrestling family. And I had never heard of them before. I grew up watching more just because I have a younger brother, and there was always like WWF or WWE on in the
Mhm.
background. So I knew like The Rock, and I knew Stone Cold Steve Austin, and then like some other big names, but I never heard of the Von Erich brothers, right? So I, of course, did some Googling ahead of time just to learn their story. And then I was able to find out that this was like a wrestling family. Their father, Fritz, was a wrestler years prior, and he didn't really get to leave his mark as like a heavyweight champion like he wanted to. So he started breeding his sons. I guess he had five, but they only focus on four of them in the movie. And he gets each of his sons into wrestling so that they could be almost like what he wanted to be. It's one of those like self-fulfilling prophecies for him, but just having that project into his children. And they're a religious family. The mother's religious Christian. They go to church, and the oldest son, Kevin, who's played by Zach Effron, it really focuses more on his perspective. But the thing about this family is that they have, so they say, a curse, and they talk about that at the beginning. There was an older brother who passed away at like the age of like 5 or 6 due to this terrible accident. And even though Kevin is the oldest of the brothers, he really technically wasn't because they lost the oldest brother at childhood. So Kevin meets Lily James' character, who ends up being his wife at the time, and he tells her at the beginning of the movie as he's like training, and um, Lily James is a fan initially, so she asks him out on a date, and she's just very assertive. She plays Pam, and she says, "Okay," as he's signing an autograph, like, "Do you want to go on a date with me?" Just very persuasive, and he's like, "Okay, like, cool, sure." So they go out on a date, and as they're talking, he gets very close to her, and he tells her, like, "Yeah, my family's cursed and stuff. We feel that way because there were stuff that happened in the past, like generations ago." And then he tells about his like youngest brother dying in early childhood. And she listens. She's like, like that's kind of a fluke thing. Like, sure. Meanwhile, at that point, the second oldest brother, Carrie, um, who's an Olympian at the time, or preparing for the Olympics in like the late 70s. He's played by Jeremy Allen White, who's in The Bear, was supposed to be throwing, what do you call it? Like discus?
Hmm.
Discus?
Yeah.
Yeah, that. So he was going to be doing that. And then historically, I guess it was canceled, the Olympics. So his dream was sort of shattered and he returns home. It takes place in Texas. Denton, Texas is where these guys are from. And the father says, "Well, son, I'm sorry to hear about your dreams and stuff with the Olympics, but you're going to join the family and become a wrestler." That's not how he talks. That's my like man voice for wrestlers.
I want you to join your brothers in the ring.
Yes, sir. I love that.
Anyway, so he's like, "Yes, dad." Like they don't even question it. They're just like, whatever dad says, like, yeah, sure. Because he's the patriarch, right?
Yeah.
And then the third youngest son, or oldest son, excuse me, is played by Harris Dickinson, who's been in a lot of films most recently. He plays David. So at this point, David and Zach, excuse me, Kevin, played by Zach Effron, are already in the ring and are fighting. And then Carrie follows them. So the three of them are involved. And then the fourth oldest son at that point, Michael, he wants nothing to do with wrestling or sports in general. He's in a band and he plays like in the garage and he's doing this secretly. And the parents aren't really happy about it because they're like, "You're not going to go anywhere with being in a band and playing music." So he's really sad about this, his character. So he's like, "Fine, whatever." And at this point, he's like, "All right, I'm just going to be kind of watching from the audience and seeing my three older brothers wrestle." So they have like this tag team, Von Erich's brothers wrestling team for at least 2, 3 years, and they're very successful. Kevin, the oldest, ends up marrying Pam, Lily Jane's character, and all is well. And then you notice at the wedding that the third oldest brother, David, starts coughing up blood and he gets very ill and he ends up having, so they're playing on a team, but they also have individual, I guess, wrestling matches throughout the country and internationally. And they say with his intestines from being punched too much. And long story short, they find him dead in his hotel room. Uh, David, who's the third oldest, and just mysteriously dies after, I guess, being sick for a couple of days. And that just is just such a horrible like black cloud that they're like, wow, this curse might be something real. And then like a few years later, they throw the fourth one. They're like, okay, well, since David can't fight anymore, Mike, who's the guy who's musically talented, you're going to take over for David. And this guy's like not a fighter. He's not built it like his three older brothers. He has no passion for it. He ends up getting really injured, hurting his shoulder. needing to go for surgery, and then he gets into like shock during the surgery, spike in fever, and then going into a coma. And after he gets out of the coma, he's pretty much like mentally paralyzed in many cases. He's never the same, and then he gets very depressed, overdoses. The second oldest, Carrie, who's the Olympian, played by Jeremy Allen White, his character likes motorcycles. He ends up losing his foot when he's riding a motorcycle. And then he fights even with like, I guess, a prosthetic, and he's like on pain meds and becomes an addict. And he also takes his life. So it's just a really sad a series of unfortunate events of, these guys who are blood, sweat, and tears trying to fulfill their father, who is like a rough coach who only wants his young boys to, so he says, be protectors and be the best they can and make a name for themselves as heavyweight champions. But yet this sport is so grueling that 3 out of the 4 die. And Kevin, the oldest one, is the only one still to this day that's living.
Wow.
So it's just very dark. So it talks about like this curse of like the Von Erichs. And the interesting thing too is that when he marries Pam and they have their first child, she's like, "Oh, can we have our son take your last name?" And he's like, "No, they're taking your last name." So all of his kids have Atkinson as their last name. Nobody has Von Erich because he was so, I don't say weirded out, but I think he was so bought into, yeah, this is a curse. I can't have my kids have this last name.
Yeah. That's
So,
crazy.
yeah, it is crazy. Very sad story. It's just another one of those things where like these parents sometimes push too hard on their kids to be a certain way, and they may not want to be. They're probably not as passionate as you, but if you push your kid too hard, you really could do long-term damage.
Yeah. Yeah, I know like everybody like it did really well as far as critically and from the audience. I don't know that it made a ton of money. I can't remember about that. Um but I remember seeing the Zach Efron did pretty good in this, right?
Yeah, he was I don't really like him. And I'm kind of biased because he was the only one apparently in High School Musical who didn't sing. Like they had to use someone else's voice apparently. So I was like, this guy sucks. He's just a pretty face. This was for so many years. I had this impression of him. I was like, all right, screw this guy. He's just like a pretty boy. Like this is my mentality for years. If you ask my friends, I don't like Zach Efron. I think he sucks. I love The Greatest Showman, but I'm like, he's the only one who's not even good. But yeah, I will give him props where props are due. He crushed it in this role as Kevin Von Erich. He really did very well at acting, and you felt his sadness, especially after losing each brother. And even at the end, he has 2 sons who cuddle up to him, and they're like, "Hey, Dad, why are you crying?" He's like, "Yeah, I should probably not be crying in front of you guys." And it's just showing like what his father used to say to him, like, "Don't cry, you're a man." And then his 2 little boys are like, "No, Dad, you can cry. It's fine. We cry." Really cute. They're like, "Why are you crying?" And he says, "I don't have any brothers anymore." And then the 2 little sons, this is so heartfelt, Kevin. I was just like, this is so sweet. They're like, "We could be your brothers, Dad." And he's like, "Okay." And it's just like really cute. But yeah, Zach Efron did a great job at acting. So good job, Zach. All right, you're winning me over for once.
Yeah, I think this was the start of Jeremy Allen White getting totally jacked too. I remember there's
Whew.
whatever
Yeah.
he's working on next, there was like was he doing Calvin Klein models or something like that? Like he was doing something just recently and he was just shredded. And I was like, that is not the bear. I was like, that dude is ripped right now.
Yeah,
So like,
he's
yeah.
looks very different. And he's like so much smaller than the other 3 actors too.
Yeah, he's not a big dude. Like I
No.
didn't watch all of Shameless, but he was great on Shameless and he wasn't, he doesn't give you the impression of being a big guy. Like he's a pretty small guy, but feisty, right? Like,
Hmm.
um, and so it's kind of interesting because Zach Efron's not small. He did Baywatch with The Rock, and
Hmm.
there was a lot of stories about um how fit he tried to get to try and keep up with The Rock. Like they would have like competitions on the beach and stuff. Because like because if you watch it, he is big in that movie. Like he is really buff in Baywatch, which is a dumb but fun movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, he tried really hard to keep up with old Dwayne, which is crazy because The Rock is
Yeah.
massive.
He's
Uh,
massive in this movie. He like it's almost like it's like his face and like a massive body. And I was like, wow, he really worked hard for this role to play this guy, Kevin Von Erich. And he's like a very family man too. And this woman, his wife, like really changes him and makes him to be like a really good man.
yeah, it sounds like it's got not a happy ending, but something of at least an ending that's going in the right direction instead of, after all the horribly sad things, at least it's kind of like his life didn't go completely to crap afterwards.
100%. And they talk about how he got to live his life dream with his wife too, of having a family like move together on a farm. And so it is a very sad ending, but also it's a happy ending for Kevin,
Mhm.
that character and stuff. And yeah, I mean, he's long marriage, big family, everything that they wanted as a couple. Good story. I'm glad I watched. I do recommend it.
All right. Yeah. You said it's on HBO right now?
Yes.
Yeah, I might have to check it out. It's not short. It's 2 hours, 12
No,
minutes, but
it's long. Yeah.
um but yeah, I might have to check it out. All right. Well, since we're on the heavy stuff, I will talk about Civil War now. Civil War came out last year, and or was it last year? Was it this year? Spring
It
of
just came
2024.
out
Yeah, it's
like
2024 is this year. Yeah,
it's like
the
a
spring of
month
this
or
year.
two ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really wanted to see it. Like if I lived closer to a theater, I probably would have just gone to the theater and saw it by myself. Um,
Hmm.
but I didn't, so I had to wait for it to come out, and so I did something that I rarely do, but it was available to rent or buy. Rent was $19, buy is 25. So I was like, I might as well spend $5 extra and buy it. Um,
Right.
and I'm glad I did because I'm going to watch it again.
Hmm.
Um, I was really impressed. It was not the movie that I thought it was. So if you watch the trailer, it feels almost like it's this big action movie that is about a civil war in the United States of America. And they talk about there's a Western Front, which is basically Texas and California, and then the rest of the US. And it doesn't explain in the trailer what the Civil War is about, just that these two sides are fighting. In the movie, and I do need to watch it again, but in the movie, I don't remember them really explaining the difference, like the what's going on. But this movie is not about the war itself, and it's not about wartime action. Like it's not an action movie. There is action in it. There's a lot of gunfire and death, but what it's really about, and I felt like I didn't get it from the trailer, and I'm partially glad I didn't because it felt so surprising. It's about Kirsten Dunst's character, and she's a wartime journalist, photojournalist. And so she is following the Western Front as they head towards Washington, D.C., where they're trying to basically end the war. They're trying to take the country back from the president. And so what happens is, it opens up. There's an initial scene where there's a bombing. She runs into this girl who's somewhere between 18 and 25. Like she's young, played by Kaylee Spaney, who's seems like she's on the rise. Like I keep seeing her name more and more lately. Um, and so um, they have a meeting, and the girl's like, "Hey, I really look up to you." She's like, "You're one of my favorite photojournalists. I want to be a photojournalist." All this stuff, and then they kind of go off to their separate ways and go to bed. And the next morning they're going to head out because they have a goal of getting to DC to interview the American president, which nobody has done, but they want to get in there and interview him because nobody has. And so as they're getting ready to leave the next morning, while Kirsten Dunst's character was asleep, the guy they're with, who the actor's name is, hang on one second, I've seen him before, but I didn't recognize his name. His name is Wagner Moura. He's definitely Latino. I think in the movie, his character's from like Venezuela or something, but he basically tells the girl, yeah, why don't you come with us? So they set off on this journey from wherever they were to head to DC. And the rest of the movie, almost the entirety of the movie, is them just going from point A to point B. But it's about all of the crazy shit that happens in between. And it is more about the trauma of war than it is about the war itself. So you have different locations they stop where people are just killing each other. People are just, there's just bad people. There's a couple places where there's just good people, but you know, they stop at the first gas station they stop at. It's really interesting because they want to get gas, obviously, and they go to get it, and the guy's like, yeah, he's like, I won't sell gas to you.
Can't help, sorry.
Sir, if we pay,
I was never gonna give it free.
over the odds.
What's over the odds?
300 for half a tank and 2 cans.
300 buys you a sandwich. We got ham or cheese?
300 Canadian.
Okay.
So, like, with this civil war going on, Canadian money is worth more than American money by apparently leaps and bounds. So they're able to make this purchase, but while they're there, they find out that these guys that run the gas station, these two other people came in and tried to rob the place or something, and they strung them up in the garage, and they've been torturing them, but they haven't killed them. And so the girl who wants to be a photojournalist wants to go in and take the picture, and she's just so like shocked by what she's seeing that she forgets she has a camera. She doesn't take a picture at all. It doesn't do anything. And Kirsten Dunst's character, who is so numb to everything, snaps a bunch of pictures, gets a bunch of stuff, and they go on their way, and they kind of have their dialogue about how, you just, in wartime, you just have to take the picture. You just have to get in there and do it. And so as they're traveling along, there's moments where they run into the Western Front military, and they film or they take photos of things happening in action. I mean, there's battle in action. There's people getting shot. They're taking pictures. And one thing that's really, I think, smart from the artistic standpoint is when it shows them taking pictures and it shows it from the angle of the camera, there's no sound. So it could be this big action scene with explosions and gunfire, but as the pictures are being taken, it's silent. So all you see is the picture. And like the first time this young girl sees somebody like actually get shot and die, like right in front of her, she's trying to take the pictures or whatever, she gets like, she throws up, like she vomit, like she's never seen it. Like she thinks she's seen this stuff before, but when you see it in person and then you take the weight of, I'm the one documenting this, it hits her really hard. As the story goes on, she gets a little better about it. At one point they stop in this town, and as they're driving through, everything goes from, this dystopian civil war thing to this perfect like town. Like kids are walking on the street, there's toys out in the front yard, people are just parked on the side. This town is completely normal, and it's so like shocking. And so they get into town, and there's a little shop, and the guy asks the girl, he's like,
Out of interest, Are you guys aware there's like a pretty huge civil war going on all across America?
Oh, sure, but we just try to stay out.
Stay out.
With what we see on the news, seems like it's for the best.
Yeah.
Well, let me know if you want to try anything on.
You know, basically this whole town is like, whatever happens, whoever wins, that's the side we'll be on. We're not getting involved. And this whole town is just living their lives like nothing's going on because it's easier. You know, and so they leave that one, and then they bump into Jesse Plemons' character who's in the trailer. And this is a big standoff because they're just killing people. Like they're just bad people. And when they're up against, you know, talking to them, you know, he's like, what kind of people are you? And the guy's like, we're Americans. And he's like, cool. What kind of Americans are you? And it's just like,
We work for Reuters.
Reuters doesn't sound American.
Okay, it's a news agency.
I know what Reuters is.
Sir, okay. I'm just saying.
Just saying, just what?
Well, you're American, okay?
Okay. What kind of American are you? Central American? South American?
Florida.
Florida. What about you? Where are you from?
Tell him, Jesse.
Missouri?
Missouri? It's the show me state, right?
Yes.
Isn't that what they call it?
Yes.
Why do they call it the show me state?
I don't know.
It's American. It is American. 100%. What about you? Where are you from?
Colorado.
Colorado. Colorado, Missouri. That's what I'm talking about. It's American. Who's this guy hiding over here? Hey, buddy. What's your deal? Where are you from? You open your mouth and tell me where you're from. Just make sure it's clear fucking English, okay? Where are you from?
I'm from Hong Kong.
Oh, China.
this super like tense, uncomfortable moment. And you know, that goes to shit. And then our main characters get out of there. And as we get towards the end of the movie, you can see that the young girl is finding her footing in this whole thing. Whereas the things that Kirsten Dunst is going through are finally starting to weigh on her. And so there's almost like this shift where the girl becomes more or becomes less afraid, and Kirsten Dunst is like feeling the weight of it. And I don't want to give away the ending. I don't want to give away too much. It's definitely, I mean, it is a heavy movie, but it's really, really good. And I think I almost feel like if the trailer had said that this is more of a journey across America story in this dystopian world, I don't know that it would have looked as interesting as it did in the trailer, because the trailer makes it look, you know, explosive and action packed and all that. And there is a good amount of action, but that's not the story. Like watching the trailers, I felt like the story was about the Civil War, about why these two sides are angry at each other, why they're trying to blow each other up, all this stuff. And it's not about that. It's really just about these people in this situation. And I thought it was really brilliant. I mean, looking it up on Rotten Tomatoes, an 81% from the critics and a 70% from the audience. So it didn't like totally light it up. Like I think the Iron Claw, I think, was 90s on both sides. But I really, really liked it. You know, like I said, it was heavy. There's a lot of death in it. Like it's not an uplifting movie at all. There's no there's no like real redemption to it. Like it's heavy for sure. But the performances are amazing. Like if you told me any one of at least the three main characters, if you told me any one of them was going to be up for an Oscar for this film, I'd believe it. I thought I'm not a huge Kirsten Dunst fan, like in a lot of cases, but I thought she was fantastic in this. Like I said, the Latino guy was good. The girl is really great. Like she could totally be up for supporting actor. Like she could totally be up for that. Like
Hmm.
it was just it was really impressive. Um, and like I said, dark and
She's
heavy,
on
but
the rise, Kaylee Sweeney. I saw
yeah,
her in
yeah,
Priscilla. She played Priscilla, and she was really good.
yeah. Like she's good. Like yeah, that's what I said. Like I hadn't heard of her before. Like she was just in something else too. Um, but yeah, she's up and coming big time. Like her name is all over the place right now.
Right.
So I think she's got a lot. She's got a great road ahead of her.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, it is an emotional film. It's a heavy film, but it's beautiful. Like the way that it's filmed, everything about it is visually, very impressive. Even even the depressing stuff, even the battles and the gunfire and all that stuff, it's very visceral. Like you feel everything you're seeing, and
Nice.
um it's really good. It's heavy. Like you got to be in the mood for it. Um, like I said, for me, usually I wouldn't spend the $25. And in a lot of cases, I don't because I'm afraid that I'll never watch it again. In this
Right.
case, like I really think not only am I going to watch it again, but I'm probably going to watch it again soon because I feel like
Hmm.
there's some stuff I missed and things like that, and I think it warrants a second watch at least for me. And I would definitely recommend it, but don't go in thinking number one that it's a dumb action movie with a bunch of stuff. Like it is very smart, and it's very much about these people and their situation. So
I thought it was gonna be more of like War of the Worlds, but without like the aliens, but more of just like a war movie, like
yeah.
a dystopian, like more contemporary war movie. But it sounds
Hmm.
like everything's more about just like behind the scenes of the people that are documenting this war, which is
Yeah.
a cool take.
Yeah, because when I remember seeing the trailer for it, and there was a movie that came out on Netflix with Pretty Woman, Julia Roberts.
Julia Roberts. Okay.
You remember? And so that one came out, and that was like an end of the world movie, right? I forget what it was. It was her and Mahershala Ali and somebody else. But anyways, at the end of that movie, it turns out that a civil war has started, and the way that movie ends, like in my head, I'm like, I know it's not. Like I know the two films aren't related, but like I'm like that's like the prequel to Civil War. Like something happened, the world went to
Hmm.
shit, and everybody, and so now the Civil War movie is going to be about a civil war, and it's just not. It's about these people driving across the country in an old Suburban, trying to get from point A to point B, and all the things that they go through.
Right.
Um, and it's really impressive. It ends in a heavy spot. It starts in a heavy spot. Um, I like from the trailer, I expected more of I can never remember his name because all I ever think of is Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec. Um, I can never remember his name though.
Oh, Nick Offerman.
There you go, Nick Offerman.
Okay.
He plays the president, and when you watch the trailer, he gives this whole big speech.
Sure, sure.
And it feels heavy duty, like it's a very impactful performance in the trailer.
Hmm.
That's the first scene of the movie, and then he's basically not in it anymore.
Gotcha.
And it's crazy because it really is like it's a great performance from him, but it's just like this little fraction of the movie. Um, and it's just crazy, and it's really good. It's really like I said, it's very visceral. Like you're very much
Hmm.
in this world with these people. So I recommend
Nice.
it, but you got to be in the mood a little bit. It's not the most depressing movie I've ever seen, but it's certainly not happy, and it's not going to have a happy ending.
Yeah.
So so taking that, I'll try and turn us a little back towards at least moderately funny stuff or fun stuff. I started The Boys season. What season is this? 4, I think.
Okay.
The most recent, yeah, this is season 4 because they got renewed for season 5, which will be the last one. And this dropped on Amazon Prime. I don't want to give too much away, but they dropped 3 episodes, and then after these 3 episodes, they'll go weekly. I think there's 10 episodes in total. And to be honest, like at this point, if you've watched The Boys, this episode's really more of the same. I don't think it does anything particularly new yet. It does introduce Jeffrey Dean Morgan, which is kind of cool. Like that guy's awesome in everything he shows up in. But a lot of it is the same situation. It really picks up right where it left off. Homelander is just a total fascist dick. There's been a lot of discourse around this because part of it, I think, is because we're getting closer to an election that people are kind of putting 2 and 2 together, but people are like really like upset that this show is so political, blah, blah, blah. And the creator, Eric Kripke, is like, yeah, it's always been political. He's like, Homelander has always been an allegory for Donald Trump. Like, that's like who he is. Like, he's like, if you don't like it, go watch something else. But that's what the show is. He's like, if it took you 3-4 seasons to figure that out, that's not on me. He's like, that's what we've been making. And so, like, there's definitely been people upset about that side of it. And to be fair, like this season, I think because the action is less over the top than it has been in other seasons, that political discourse feels more in your face than it even has before. But it is definitely, like I said, it really is more of the same show. Like all the characters are kind of just where they were. Like nothing feels like it's changed enough to be a new season. So it feels like a little step back. It's still rated really well. I think the season is 84% on Rotten Tomatoes so far with these first 3 episodes. The 2 seasons before that were in the mid to high 90s. So the show itself, it's good. It's just not doing anything exciting yet. And I think by the time that it ends, that it will. But the characters have a ways to go. I think the Billy Butcher character, he's a little different. Like he's really coming to terms with the fact that he's dying, and so that makes for a difference. There's one great new character that they brought in. I wish I knew the actress's name, but her name is Sister Sage, and she's a Black woman. She's a superhero, but she's on the bad guy side. She's on the side of the Seven, but she's the smartest person on the planet. Like, because that's her superhero ability. She's just the smartest person on the planet. And all the time somebody's like, oh, well, this is the smartest woman on the planet. And she's like, no. Smartest person on the planet. Like she wants people to know she's not just the smartest woman, she's the smartest person. Smarter than all those men too.
So funny.
But like her character is really interesting because she's not over the top. Like she doesn't come across as a total like narcissistic asshole like a lot of the bad guy characters are on this. She's smarter than that. Like she knows like if she's going to manipulate a situation, if she's going to do anything with the situation, she knows the next 10 steps that are happening. So she doesn't have to be a jerk to have things go the way she wants. She knows what she's doing, and she's the only person that will stand up to Homelander, which is why he kind of wants her around, because he realizes at the beginning of this season that literally everybody around him is just a sycophant. Everybody's just going to do whatever he tells them to do. And they're never going to argue with him, no matter if his idea is bad or good. And at least this woman, even if he doesn't agree with her, will look him in the face and be like, this is a bad idea. You should do this thing instead because this will get you further along in the things you're trying to do politically. And so she's a really interesting character. She's, I think, the best new character of the show. And like I said, everybody else is just kind of where they were. So it does feel like a bit of a step back for the show because it doesn't feel like it's pushing the envelope anymore yet. So I'm hoping that as the season goes on, that it goes, that it does more and more of that. I think with, I want to see where Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character goes because he hasn't been in it a lot yet. And he's a very charismatic actor. So whatever his part is, I have to assume is going to chew up some screen time at some point and do something really interesting. So it's still a good show. It's just not doesn't feel like it's pushing the envelope in the way that it has in the past. And that's kind of what made it great. So I definitely, if you've already watched it, I definitely recommend watching it. You know, you're already in it. The show itself is over the top and gory and crazy and um, huge political satire the whole way across the board. So um, if that's your jam, then definitely watch it. If it's not, you know, I definitely know people that don't love it because of what it is. Um, but it's pretty damn good. So
Is it it's a superhero show that's not like Marvel and not DC? It's just kind of written on its own.
yeah, because it is like the gist of the show is that it's like basically like what if superheroes were actually like normal people that just got superpowers, right? So not everybody's Captain America or Superman where they just have this super moral compass where they're going to go do the good thing all the time. A lot of these superheroes are total dicks. Like they have
Right.
powers, they can do stuff, but they're not good people. They're just people that got superpowers. So
Right.
then and Homelander, of course, is the most powerful superhero on the planet, but he is a total dick. Like he will just kill
Mm,
anybody, doesn't care. You know, there's always people always say, well, if you had a superpower and you could turn invisible and walk into a bank and steal all the money and walk out and no one would know, would you do it? Well, these are all the people that would do the thing that in the comic books you don't want your superheroes to ever do, right?
right. Interesting.
Like,
Okay.
and so it's definitely a dark take on the superhero thing. Like in the very first episode, our main character who has taken a step back in this season, but our main character Huey is just a regular guy played by Jack Quaid. Um, he's walking down the street with his girlfriend and this superhero A Train, who is basically like the Flash, like he can run super fast, runs right through Jack Quaid's girlfriend. She just explodes. And he just keeps going because they don't care if they kill somebody,
Or not.
whatever, they don't care. And the other thing is because the superheroes were effectively created by a corporation with a serum, right? It's all a business. So they make superhero movies starring these superheroes. So not only are they heroes, but they're movie stars, they're celebrities, they're
Got it.
all marketed. So I mean, it's definitely like a satire on American capitalism and American government and
Right. Who you know and what you get out of it. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
which
Interesting.
which I think is what makes it a good show. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you have to be able to take it as that satire. If you go in and you're like you just like laughing at how bad these people are, you're missing kind of the point of it.
Right.
Um, but it's really good and the performances are great. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
been the other thing that they've been dealing with now is that a lot of people that just aren't paying attention for whatever reason have like put a hero complex on the Homelander character and the creator's like this dude is bad, like no one should look up to this guy, he's a
Right.
bad guy, like he will kill anybody, do anything wrong, you know, doesn't care. Like in
Right.
this season especially he talks about how humans are basically pets, like they don't
Mm-hmm.
matter. So you don't have to worry about if you kill one, if you do whatever. You don't have to worry about it. They're just fragile and weak and you know all this.
Yeah.
And
It
and
goes against everything Peter Parker's character stands for. With great power comes great
yeah,
responsibility, right? It's just like, no, with great power, I'm gonna do my own thing, and too
yeah,
bad.
100%. And like all of the characters, they're just I mean, they're not good. Like there's no
Moral
it's
compass.
yeah, and it's definitely like
Huh.
these characters are just even like the good guy characters aren't good. Billy Butcher, the guy that's like trying to
Mm,
put an end to the superheroes, like he's jaded and he's like he just wants to kill them all.
right.
Like it's just it's very it's funny, you know, in that they definitely write their comedy in. It's satire and all that,
Hmm.
but it's dark. Like you know, it's not the happiest of ideas, but they do a good
Sure.
job with it. And then some of the like they don't have a problem with nudity, sex, and gore. Like it is
all
I
out
think,
there.
yeah, I think if the show was made in the 80s, it would be X-rated, like just because of the way they do the things that they do.
Mm.
Um, you know, there's penises and boobs and butts and sex and just everything.
What?
So
On
yeah.
Prime?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's
Like
wild.
yeah. So it is, like I said, in another generation, the show would have been X-rated and just not been made.
That would never
Um,
happen with like the DC or like Marvel world because they're so buttoned up. Like that's
mhm.
just it's like that if it was on drugs and went haywire and like take off those, rose tinted glasses. This is how it is.
Yeah, for sure. And then that's exactly the point. And that's what
That's
makes
so
it
funny.
different, right? Because it is just so different from your
Right.
normal superhero movie.
Interesting.
So
Okay. I have a
yeah.
friend, he does photography and like photo editing, and now I understand where it's coming from, but him and a couple of his friends dressed up as the characters from The Boys and started taking photos around Manhattan, all dressed up and walking around. I think it was like Long Island City or Astoria, somewhere in Queens, and they were taking photos. And I recognized that green outfit because that's the one he wore
Hmm.
with like the scales looking type of
Yeah.
thing. So
That's the deep.
that's the
Yeah.
deep. Okay.
Yep.
So funny. Okay, now I know more about it. I was just like, cool, another show about
Yeah, it
superheroes.
is a show about
Yay.
superheroes, but it is a very different show about heroes for sure.
Okay. I think you intrigued me because normally I'm not gonna lie, it's not really my thing, but
Yeah.
it sounds like more of like a case study of just human behavior.
Oh, big
Oh,
time.
and they've been given like major physical advantages.
Yeah. I mean, like the basic gist of the show is there are no heroes. Like these people are
Right.
just they have powers, but it does not make them good people. So
Right.
it does make it a very interesting show.
And it's bestowed upon them in the form of a serum. No one's just born
Right.
really fast or
Right.
interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's like it's mass produced.
Hmm. And so if you wanted the serum, you had to go through X, Y, and Z. And then to become a
Mm,
celebrity hero, you have to audition and go through all this. Like one of
that's
the
the politics
girls,
of it.
yeah, one of the
Yeah.
girls is she literally grew up doing pageants, superhero pageants instead of beauty pageants, right? And
Interesting.
then they after season 3, they did a
Hmm.
different show called Gen V, which is about a
Yeah.
superhero college. So all these
Hmm.
kids that have gotten powers through their lives were trying to get into this college that's like the big superhero college.
Right.
And then
Like
so,
sky high, but not really because
but
it's
again,
manufactured.
yeah, and everybody's messed up. Like even these kids, even these teenagers, like they don't have to follow the same code because who's going to stop them from doing the things they can do?
Yeah.
And so it's really, but it was also a really good show. Like that one, the Gen V started a little slow, and like for the first few episodes, you're like, I don't know if this is going to be great or not. And by the
Hmm.
end, it's really great. Like everybody
It
does a really
picks
good
up.
job. So
And this started in 2019.
I think so. Yeah, yeah. It hasn't been super long, and
Cool.
they've produced them pretty quickly. So I think they've
Interesting.
announced season 5, and I'm pretty sure it'll just drop next year and be done.
Yeah.
So
Nice. Okay.
yeah,
Cool. No, it's definitely sounds like a whole different take on what a hero actually is
yeah,
and what it means to have power.
yes, yeah. It's more about power than it is about being a hero, for sure. So, all right, you've got Ezra then. I haven't even heard of
Ezra.
this. I don't know what this is.
It's a movie. It
All
just came
right.
out 2 weekends ago. I saw it on Tuesday with my neighborhood $9 movie night, AMC, local ladies' night.
Oh, I have seen the trailer for this. This looks super good. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll tell you about it. So it it's like takes place modern time. It's about a comedian played by Bobby Cannavale, who is sort of recently divorced from his real life wife,
Oh,
Rose
really?
Byrne.
I did
Yeah,
not know
Rose
that.
Byrne. Yeah. And I never saw them perform together, so this is pretty cool. But they play, a recently divorced couple, and they have a son with autism. And Bobby Cannavale's character is very broken and has his own like mental health issues that he's dealing with. And it's cool because it takes place in Hoboken, like that's where they
Hmm.
live, and he performs in New York City. So there's just a lot of sites where I'm like, wow, I can resonate with this. Like these are places I've lived or currently live. And he performs late night comedy, and guess who his lucky charm or his good luck charm is? It's his son, who's at the age of like 10, 11, 12, who has high functioning autism. And his son's name is Ezra, or as they call him, Ezzy. And Ezzy is a great supporter of his dad, and him and his father have such a special bond. And Bobby Cannavale's character really just wants his son to be a part of his journey throughout comedy. And he feels that every time his son is at the comedy clubs that he's performing at, he just is able to really deliver punchlines much better, etc. He even goes and takes his son, like in the beginning, to a late night comedy, and he lies to Rose Byrne, his wife's character, and says, yeah, we're just going out for like a movie night. And she's like, sure, sure. And then they get back late. She's like, you guys didn't go for a movie night. You went to a comedy club. He's like, yeah, yeah. His agent is played by Whoopi Goldberg,
Mm.
and his father is played by Robert De Niro, who's a man of his, with his own issues. And then you come to learn that Max, the main character who Bobby Cannavale plays, had like kind of a weird childhood where he was raised by his father, but their mother just up and left when he was young. So he's pretty damaged from that. And then the most recent divorce, and his ex-wife is moving on, Rose Byrne, with an attorney. So it's just pretty odd. And the son is out of control. He's been kicked out of numerous schools, and all the mother wants to do is get him on a good track on medication and to go to the right school with children like him. And Bobby Cannavale's character, Max Brandel, wants nothing to do with it. He's like, no, my son's, even though he's autistic, he is different, but why do we have to put him in an environment that's different? He's meant to shine and be with everybody else.
You know, the word autism comes from the Greek, in your own world. I don't want him in his own world. I want him in this world.
So it's just a showcase of different dynamics between different parenting styles and what that looks like. And his character doesn't make the best decisions for his autistic son. I mean, he's bringing him to clubs late at night to watch him perform, and the kid has some very, high sensitivity issues, so he cannot be hugged and or touched to some degree. But yet, like, self-soothing involves him like rubbing the earlobes of like a family member or like a random person, but he doesn't like to be touched or hugged. He screeches and screams, and he's very just naturally very funny too with his mannerisms, and just they talk about how he can never tell a lie. So at one point in the beginning of the film, Bobby Cannavale, he's completely just face planting with jokes and isn't doing very well. He's like, I need my good luck charm. And after a performance where his son is in the audience, he crushes it. There are people that are scouting, and he gets a call that he is able to audition for the Jimmy Kimmel show. So he's like, oh, wow, that's awesome. And after this all happens, shortly after, his son, I don't want to give it away, but his son ends up getting into a car accident where doctors are like, oh, was this like an attempted suicide? He needs help. And then Bobby Cannavale's character, Max, is like, my son doesn't need help. He's fine. And he ends up hitting a doctor and like getting into some serious trouble, going behind bars, and gets thrown in jail. So they put a restraining order on him, and he decides to kidnap his kid. And as he's kidnapping his kid, the reason he's doing it, he's like, all right, I want to be with my son, and he's going to come with me cross country to California so that I can go to this Jimmy Kimmel audition. So that's the journey he's taking. And it's just very heartfelt and funny. It's a good mixture of comedy and, a very serious topic of just dealing with a child with special needs and how they beautifully just portray that in the form of this film, which is really great. It's based on the guy who wrote the screenplay, his relationship with his son and his relationship with his partner, who he's no longer married to. So he was able to do that. And then it was actually directed by Tony Goldwyn, who was in Ghost. He played like the bad guy in Ghost, and he's still close with Whoopi, so he casted Whoopi. So he directed it. His friend, very dear friend, who is the screenwriter for the movie, it's loosely based on his own life. And then Bobby Cannavale and Rose Byrne want to be a part of the project. Robert De Niro came on, want to be part of the project. And then they casted William Fitzgerald, who makes his debut acting wise. They wanted to have an autistic child play Ezra, and they found him after tons of auditions. And apparently, they found him only like a few weeks before starting to tape. And the kid's from New Jersey, or Pennsylvania, like not too far away, but they found him and they're like, this kid's going to be great. And his relationship and just his acting capabilities really shine through, and he crushes it as Ezra. You really feel, and I wasn't sure if they actually casted an autistic actor until after the fact when I was reading up on and reading the reviews and then watching interviews. This child definitely, he has autism. He's 15 years old in real life, but he looks like he's 9 or 10. Super young. So if you hear him interview, you can tell he's on the spectrum, but he's so funny and natural and really great. So very good acting, very heartfelt. I shed some tears at the end, but just all good things too, because it shows how parenting is hard. Is hard, in particular when you have a child with special needs. And, on top of that, if you're parenting a child with special needs and you're not currently with your partner and you're separated. So it's going to that as well as someone who's trying to follow his or her dreams.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember it once I brought it up. Like I remember seeing the trailer, and the one thing it felt like it feels like in the beginning of the movie and until he starts this cross country road trip, he loves his son, but he doesn't understand like what autism really means. Like he doesn't have a real great grasp on it, in that he thinks his son should just be normal like everybody else, right?
Right.
And it seemed like from the trailer that in this journey across the country, he's going to learn a shitload more about autism than he was expecting to learn.
Well, I think it's not even that. I think this guy's in denial. He's in denial and he's not parenting well. Rose Byrne's like really the parent who's trying to take initiative to help her son, and he thinks he's helping his son, but really he's not. And I think while he's on this road trip, he's not only unpacking his parenting decisions, but also just his own past with his mother leaving and his own issues for many years that he has had bottled up. And I think he uses comedy as a coping mechanism. And you see that throughout the film.
That makes sense. Yeah. So I don't know that I have talked about it on the show before, but my middle son was diagnosed on the spectrum at 2 years old. He didn't speak. And fortunately, we found out through a regional center that was nearby. They sent somebody to our house every day. So at 2 years old, there was somebody in our house every day working with him. And I think at 3.5, somewhere between 3 and 4, they started sending him to a school every day that was dedicated to autistic kids and kids with special needs. And so my son has been in school since he was little, and it was not short. It was 8 to 5, 8 to 4, like he was in school all day. And it was about therapy, how to behave properly and learn to speak. That was a big one. Now the kid doesn't shut up. He's super smart, gets terrible grades because he also, he's more on the ADHD side of the spectrum than he is on the like nervous tick and all that kind of stuff side of the spectrum, right? Like if you didn't know him, you wouldn't even ever guess that he was autistic. You'd think he was just a pain in the ass. And he is, and I love him very much. We went out to the stores and stuff today. Like we had a great time. He's, like I said, he's easy to talk to. You wouldn't know if you didn't know. But when you're going through that process of finding out, when they tell you that you're now the parent of an autistic kid, like you don't know what that means. And so like I know for myself, when I was sitting there and they told me that, like in my brain, I just almost shut down. Like I was like, I don't know what to do next. Like I don't know how to deal with this. Not that I wasn't going to deal with it, but just in that moment, I didn't know what the next thing was. And if you don't learn how to deal with that and you don't have the people around you and you're not open to dealing with it, I can see how it could just be, you could just spiral out of control.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think it was by first grade, they were ready to send him to a regular school, but they were going to send him with an aide. Like there's going to be somebody with him every day at school. And I mean, by that age, he really like he was hanging out with other kids and he was relatively normal. It was more about keeping him focused on the things that he was doing than it was anything else. It was all about focus. And it still is to this day. Like he still has an IEP. Like there he goes to he's technically considered special ed, even though he's smarter than half the kids at the school. Like no question. Like he's really smart. He just doesn't focus, doesn't apply that stuff. But the things that he loves, he knows everything about. Like the kid knows more about football than I do. He wants to, and he's playing football. So, he's a pretty normal kid. He's got a girlfriend, his life is normal. But he just has these certain things that he needs help with still. But if you don't, like I said, if you don't know, like that is a scary thing to hear. And if you don't teach yourself how to deal with just the little things, yeah, I can see it would be that denial thing would be a big deal for sure. I remember basically being the opposite of him when they were talking about sending my son to first grade. I was like, yeah, I want him to be able to go, but is he ready? Is the rest of the world ready? Like, you got to think about all this stuff. So it's definitely interesting. So I remember watching this trailer and really being really interested in it. Plus, I love all these actors: Bobby Cannavale, Rose Byrne, Vera Farmiga, Whoopi Goldberg, Rainn Wilson. Like,
Yeah.
all of these actors I really like. Robert De Niro, like they're so. I don't think I'll see it in the theater, but I think as soon as I see it streaming, hopefully I'll recognize it and watch it, because I remember seeing the trailer and I was like, that is a movie I really want to see. And I think because it hits home for me a little bit. But yeah, I was
Totally.
really, really interested in it.
Yeah. It's super heartfelt but funny at the same time, and you could just tell like they have a very good dynamic on screen. Bobby Cannavale and the little boy who plays, I shouldn't say little boy, he's 15, but like if you hear him interviewed, he looks like he's 9 or 10, he looks young. William Fitzgerald, they just look like they could be father and son just based on how well they acted together, and it's really sweet. So I'm glad I saw it, and it's nice that apparently for a couple years they were trying to put this together. Tony Goldwyn and his friend, who's the screenwriter whose life it's loosely based on, they were like, we got to tell your story.
Was it Tony
And
Spiridakis? Is he the one that
the screenwriter? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I know it was another Tony. So yeah, he was like, this is a good story that I think a lot of people can relate to some degree. And if, there isn't someone in your family, then surely somebody, growing up that is on, I mean, they're calling it now neurodivergent, right? That's almost like the umbrella term for someone that has some form of a cognitive disability, whether it be like ADHD or autism, things like that.
Yeah, dyslexia is on there now.
Dyslexia.
Yeah, because part of the thing was, and like I said, because I have a kid that went through this, they broadened the spectrum because it was an insurance issue. So
Mm-hmm.
many so many things were not being handled because there wasn't a diagnosis. So when you broaden the spectrum and accept more things into that, you can get a diagnosis and then start getting these therapies. Now, we were very lucky because this regional center um, that we found was kind of like government funded. And so a ton of the aid that we got, we did not pay for, which was
Right.
amazing. And it was fantastic. The girl that came into our home in the very beginning was unbelievable. Like she just sat with him on the floor in our house for like 4 to 6 hours a day and just played with him and talked to him and like one to one, which is something that I couldn't do because I was working. My wife couldn't do because she had another kid. And I think by the time we knew, let's see, we knew he was autistic at 2. So my youngest son was already born. So she was taking care of a baby and a toddler. Like she didn't have the
It's a
time to
lot.
just sit there and focus on him. So having this person that could come in and do that was unbelievable. And
Mm-hmm.
so like the regional center was incredible. And I've talked to other people that have been in a similar situation early on, and I'm like, find one. If there's one around you, find one,
Mm-hmm.
and just like see what your options are because it was life changing. I didn't have money back then. I don't have money now, but like, um, if somebody told me I was gonna have to pay for all this therapy, I'd have been like, I don't even know. Like, I can't imagine what my life would have been like without that help. And
Right.
so it it was pretty life changing. So again, I feel like I can relate to the character in the story, and I remember feeling that way from the trailer. Um, so yeah, I'm excited to see it when it comes out
For
on streaming.
sure. Yeah, but it's definitely a happy ending. You see like how far the child goes too, and he has his own like transformations uh during this road trip, which is nice too. So it's a good film. I enjoyed it. I think it's a powerful lesson for those who, know somebody with autism, or even if you don't, you learn a lot more about it.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's good. I think the more things that come out that deal with it is always good because
Mm-hmm.
if you're in my position when somebody tells you, hey, your kid's got autism, you're like, well, fuck. Like the only thing in my head is Rain Man at that time. Like, you know,
Right.
which is an accurate depiction of one kind of autism, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it wasn't a poorly done film. It wasn't a tasteless film. It wasn't mocking it or anything.
Sure.
It was very much but back then the term that they used to describe somebody like that was idiot savant because they couldn't communicate well. So they seemed like they were not intelligent. And like if you in a lot of cases, like in IQ tests and things like that, they wouldn't do well because they couldn't focus on the things they needed to focus on. But then the way their brains worked is just different. So like there's a scene in Rain Man when they drop a box of matches and he instantly counts them all.
Right.
Like that's a thing that some people can do. And it's like this other
Right.
part of their brain is unlocked and it's just wired differently. And that's why I actually think the term neurodivergent is not a bad term. Like their
Mm-hmm.
brains work differently. I saw one guy, um, he was talking about, he made the comparison of the way that, an autistic brain works. And we see it as it's not working, but he's like, imagine, if you have film for a camera and you want to take a picture of the sun, you have to have a certain film that blocks out, enough of the light that you can take an actual picture. He's like, now imagine using that film to take pictures of other things, it wouldn't work. Like if you were to just take a picture of downtown New York with the filter that's on to take a picture of the sun, you wouldn't see anything. Like it would feel different. It wouldn't work right. And so it's just they're wired different. And so um it's really interesting. And like I said, I think the term neurodivergent works really well because
Mm-hmm.
it literally brain different. Like that's what it means. Like and so it it's a good way to look at it.
For sure. Yeah, definitely give it a watch when it comes to streaming. It's all the good feels and you learn a lot and great acting too.
Yeah, Bobby Cannavale is one of those guys that I think is underappreciated right now. Like he's done some really great stuff, especially in the last couple of years, and I don't know that everybody like. I feel like he should be a household name.
This will give him the respect. This will give him the respect he deserves because it's like this guy can act for sure.
Yeah, he's really good. So cool. All right. Well, we managed to start okay, finish okay, and got a little dark in the middle, so that worked out.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, then I don't know if Andrew's back next week or the following week. I can't remember. But I'll be here. If you're here, that'd be awesome, and we'll watch some stuff. I feel like there was something else that was coming out recently that I wanted to catch that I hadn't caught, so I'm gonna try and see some more stuff before next week. I'm sure if Andrew's back, we'll get caught up on the Acolyte, the Star Wars show, and some other stuff. He'll probably want to talk about the boys at that point. But otherwise, we will see what happens. And we'll say to everybody watching, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.